The Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation Commission meeting, this 8th day of September 2020. Ron, if you would, please call roll.
Commissioner Brewster. Here. Commissioner Barwick. Here. Commissioner Hughes is absent. Commissioner Gaddis. Here. Commissioner Zelf. Here. Commissioner Dillingham. Here. Commissioner Holder. Here. Commissioner Mabry.
Here. If you would, please stand for our invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Nels Rutherford.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
JD, if you'll do the introduction of guests, please.
Yes, sir. Got a packed house, it looks like today, with our social distancing in place. Got Daryl Knoblet here from the youth hunts. We'll be talking a little bit later on the agenda, so working on that. Will Frank Woodridge, I think, if I can read. There he is. Thank you. And of course, the couple with better attendance than most commissioners, James Deach and Laura McIver from Quail Forever. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, JD. I think also if you do the presentation of awards.
Yes,
JD.
sir. For my mask that I got just for Barry. No pokes. Is this on? Now it is, right? Okay, so we've got a couple of employees to recognize this morning. First is David Robertson, who is here today to be recognized for his 30 years of service to the department. So David, of course, was hired as a game warden in 1990. His first assignment was in Latimer County. In 96, he was able to transfer back to his home county, Mulkey County, where he resides today. He was promoted to warden supervisor in 2012, and he is now the district chief and was promoted to that in 2017. He lives on his family ranch with his wife, Nita, and they've been married for 41 years. Wow, congratulations, that's amazing. He spends his off-duty time wrangling cattle and a much harder job of wrangling grandkids. Definitely fun. Although David's personal life is spent with people he loves, doing the things he loves, his love for ODWC has taken precedence on many occasions. Time and time again, David drops everything and puts his service to the department above himself and his family to make sure that sportsmen and sportswomen of Oklahoma receive the service they have come to expect from ODWC and justice for wildlife crimes committed throughout the 2nd District. Captain Robertson definitely takes pride in being a game warden, and I think more than any other of our field wardens out there, he will even drop things and come volunteer his time to work here in the headquarters office, which is saying a lot because most of those guys don't work at headquarters for a reason. They don't want to be at headquarters. So David's a very familiar face to me and those of us that work here because he does come in when asked and mans the phones and whatever else is asked of him. And so I personally know that and have gotten to know David and know that he's a great guy. We're very lucky to have him. 30 years of service is impressive, and we hope you'll stick with us for another 10 or so at least. So thanks for being here, David. Oh, look, you don't have to answer. Congratulations.
Thank you, JD and Commission. It's nice to be appreciated, so I do appreciate that. You know, it seems like just a few days ago when I stood in the former director's office, raised my hand and swore an oath to uphold the fish and wildlife laws of the state. Here I am 30 years later, and I know I made the right decision that day. I'm proud to be a part of this institution, proud to be a team member, and I'm honored to wear this uniform. Sir, with your blessing and your permission, I'd like to say a couple more.
Absolutely.
Thank you, thank you. That's all for me.
I think I scared Wade off. That might have been spitting on him or something. Right below me there. But it does allow me to take this off so I can talk. Next, we have Melinda Hickman, also with 30 years of service to the department. So Melinda was hired, it's weird for me to say Melinda, we always call her Mel. She was hired in August of 1990 as a natural resource biologist after getting her bachelor's in biology from Appalachian State. She has been inspiring and positive force for all of her coworkers, constituents, and the general public from the very beginning. Mel has dedicated her career to helping people make personal connections with nature and to educating the public about the amazing natural resources of Oklahoma. A great example of that is her selfless service to the public the past 25 years of hard work, sweat, and tears that she's invested in the Selman Backwatch program. And so if anybody's participated in that, you know, hard to imagine that happening without Melinda involved. So definitely a memorable experience for all. She's also poured her heart into the Hackberry Flat Educational Center since the early 90s when it was developed and built. In the 25 plus years of service at Hackberry, Mel has provided wonderful nature experiences to thousands of citizens by providing birding tours, nature tours, monarch tagging, and other outreach and educational efforts. She brings experiences with nature to our citizens through the development of the Oklahoma Wildscapes program, guiding gardeners and landscapers in effective ways to attract diverse wildlife to native plants to be viewed and enjoyed. She, during her career, she's deservedly been recognized for her work, earning accolades in the form of prestigious awards. In 1997, she was presented the Wendell Bever Award by the Oklahoma Wildlife Federation for her impressive conservation work in the state. She was also named Wildlife Division's Biologist of the Year in 2011. More recently, in 2018, Mel received the coveted Biologist of the Year Award for the Southeastern Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, SEFWA. So awards reigning in, but very well deserved for Mel, and she deserves so much more, that's for sure. Hopefully you all have had the opportunity to meet her before. She's a true treasure for the department and a great little spark plug for all of us. So congratulations on 30 years of service.
All I just want to say is, gosh, it's really enjoyable working with this ODWC family for the amazing resources of this outstanding state. Thank you.
Melinda, David, thank you guys for that 30 years of service. We just want you to know that it certainly does not go unappreciated. So thank you for the 30 years you put in here. Appreciate it. Next on the agenda is consideration and vote to approve the minutes of last month. Need a motion if there is one? Motion, second? Second. Discussion, roll call.
Commissioner Brewster. Aye. Commissioner Barwick. Aye. Commissioner Gaddis. Aye. Commissioner Zelf. Aye. Commissioner Dillingham. Aye. Commissioner Holder. Aye. Commissioner Mabry.
Aye. JD, I believe you're up on the director's report, please.
Yes, sir. Also, in addition to the director's report that you should have in your packets, you should have Brittany's report from things that are going on at the federal level. That has mostly been related to COVID and stimulus type things. So I'll just let you read through there, including a breakdown of what is included in the House Appropriations Bill. Of course, there'll be a different version from the Senate, and there'll be reconciliation. So a long way to go before they settle on appropriation measures. So nothing else really significant, I think, to point out in there. So I'll skip over to my director's report, and Corey can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's been little activity at the state legislative level. They've got a couple of interim studies. Only one even remotely deals with us, and it's one that deals with the Administrative Procedures Act and our rulemaking process, every agency's rulemaking process. So we'll kind of have to see how that shakes out. Yeah. Okay, thank you. And I guess I should remind everybody too, we're live streaming on our YouTube channel, so keep that in mind as you're speaking. You might want to grab a mic so everybody can hear what is being said. So, so not a whole lot going on state legislative level right now. You can see the list of interim studies that have been approved, the links to them there in your director's report. I also want to point out calendar-wise, we hosted, we were supposed to host the National R3 Symposium in Broken Arrow. It was going to be in May, and then we moved it to August, and now we've moved it to next May. But on those same August dates, the Council of Advanced Hunting and Shooting Sports hosted a National R3 Forum online. So we did that August 26th and 27th. I think it went really well. A lot of people participated and got to hear kind of the latest on hunting and shooting R3 techniques, ways people are coping with COVID and how that's changed the world. But it was a good one. This week kicks off, in fact, starting tomorrow, the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, AFWA, is going to have its virtual meeting this year instead of in person in Denver as it was originally planned. So there'll be a number of us engaged online for days on end, which sounds really appealing, I'm sure. But lots of information and business will get covered. This Saturday, we are officially kicking off our Fostering Outdoor Oklahoma Families with a fishing clinic, fishing event for 20 foster kids and their families down at South Lakes Park, which you'll remember is the place where we dedicated the Paul George fishing dock. So we're going to try to manage and keep everybody socially distanced and that sort of thing. So it's kind of obviously invitation only, and we'll try to have some media there, but it will be a partnership between us and DHS that will be kicking off that Saturday with providing them with their own fishing rod and fishing tackle box and some tackle. The local Firefighters Association, I think, pitched in to purchase some of that fishing equipment. The Wildlife Foundation is pitching in to help purchase some equipment, as some dinner, I think, or some fishing licenses for the adult members of the family. So, so we're looking forward to a great event there. Of course, October 5th will be the next monthly commission meeting here at 9. And some people have asked already, that'll be a busy day for us. So we'll have the commission meeting at 9, and then we'll have a luncheon for commissioners and ex-commissioners that day to hear from Rick Grunman at our new director of the Wildlife Foundation, to talk about the foundation and its activities. And then at 2 o'clock will be the event where we dedicate the building to John Grondike and recognize his 44 years of service to the department. So it'll be a feat to pull off with social distancing, with as many people that are going to want to roll out and see John and wish him well. But we're hoping the weather's nice so we can at least spread outside and do some of that. So we'll see. Let me see. So speaking of Rick Grunman, we've been spending a lot of time getting him up to speed over the past month, learning about what the agency does, getting to know staff, looking for ways. This was his idea to see if we could tap into the CARES Act funding to do some fish and wildlife COVID relief related activities. So we've got some proposals in the pipeline still pending. Let me see what else. And also staff and Rick and the foundation have been working on looking at repairing or replacing the pipeline at Hackberry Flats. I think I may have mentioned that last time as well. So everybody's been busy looking at that particular option to get water flowing again to our wetlands in that very dry part of the state. Several of us spent considerable time vetting and interviewing candidates for the assistant unit leader at the co-op unit up at Oklahoma State University. So I know those that were involved in that know it was Wade, Bill in particular, a bit of a death march going through hours and hours of vetting and interviewing, but finally got it done. Human Dimensions update, we're going to have an update from them on the agenda today, so I'm going to save that for them, for Betsy and Corey, so I don't mention anything that they might have in their presentation later. Fisheries Division, you can see, has been busy, stocking at a number of locations. I'll let you read there what's been going on, but busy times for Fisheries. I&E Division, you can read through there. Looks like they've got a couple of pages of bullets of stuff that's been going on and some interesting stuff indeed. Same for Wildlife Division. I'll let you read through there so I don't take up too much of your time. And then we've got the law enforcement update in your packet as well. And so rather than read through those 5 pages of activities, I think it's just important to point out that despite COVID, everybody's been staying hooked up and extra busy. And so if you have any questions about what's included in that report or any other thing, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, JD. Next will be a presentation of July financial statement by Amanda Stork. Amanda.
Good morning, Commissioners and Director Strong. Today I have for you the July 31, 2020 financial statement. I'm used to clickers. So the first report is the combined balance sheet for all fund types. As of July 31st, 2020, our total liabilities are $16,978,331, and our total liabilities and fund balance is $441,965,174. Why not? I'm glad it moves.
Gotta hold your mouth right. Can we? Oh, there it went.
Like, where am I supposed to point it so it moves? And then I think it went too far. Okay. So the trust fund combined balance sheet, our expendable trust balance is $20,178,392. Non-expendable trust balance is $93,136,198. Our pension trust is $122,144,089. Our DC trust is $3,922,828 for a total of $239,381,507, as compared to last year's total of $230,944,501. So we'll just be on a really bad delay. Okay. So for the month of July, our combined statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for July 31st, 2020, our total revenue is $4,879,085. This is just for the month of July. Expenditures, $5,279,359. Our total other funding sources is $4,443,048 for a total fund balance of $39,349,056. That's a 13.75% increase over last year. Okay, and then our combined statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for just the trust funds. Our total for July 31st is $219,203,115. This is still the wrong report. I don't know. I usually don't have this problem. How about dog visit? Okay. Thank you. I was trying not to break it. Sorry, I'll push it harder next time. As compared to 2019 of $211,323,161. The longest financial statement report I've ever had to do because I can't get the, okay, so still nothing. And I'm pushing it really hard.
Push it real good.
Okay, so you just have to trust me. The wildlife contributions report is $5,125. We have 3 contributions. Hopefully you can see those in your packet. Or Dawn can, okay, there we go. Just towards the flag. Okay. And that's it. So great. It was so great.
Anybody dare ask her a question now that she's...
Marketing efforts, or is everybody getting?
I am assuming it's due to our marketing efforts. We get some really good reports from Nils and Micah on those strategic marketing to those groups.
And that I may have breezed through it in the director's report too, but I know they've done some targeted marketing campaigns, which we're able to do now with our new system. Go ahead.
They have a microphone they pass around.
Yeah. Let's, we need to make sure we use a mic too if you're gonna ask a question, Bill, just because you might use that mic right in front of you if you don't mind, so there it is.
Yeah, Commissioner Brewster has a question, I think.
If it has to do with the clicker, I'm not gonna, I take no questions.
I noticed on the category here, miscellaneous did really well compared to last year. Just curious what made up miscellaneous on the revenue side. $1,685,000. That's really good miscellaneous.
Yeah, it is. I'll have to send you an email and let you know what the breakdown of that is.
I have one more, excuse me. This is a little bit removed from this, the general subject, but I was wondering if there's been an update or anything to report on the Indian compacts and the licensing and the certification of those licenses and where we stand on those. I was just curious. I haven't heard anything in a while. I didn't know if there was anything to report.
Nothing to report right now. You know, we've got a 1-year extension in place for 2020 with the Cherokees and Choctaws. That'll expire December 31st. So
Okay.
we're hopeful we'll get new compacts negotiated with those two, but nothing to report as of yet.
As far as the numbers that they're meeting, are they?
You know, they're still a little below the minimums, but they've been getting those numbers up every year,
Okay.
as I recall. So,
Okay.
yeah,
I'm just curious.
that's definitely going to be part of the renegotiation process, because, you know, we have been having conversations and they're talking about maybe even providing higher numbers than before, so.
Good. Okay.
And I did find out what the $1.8 million in miscellaneous is. It's our NERDA funding that we received.
Oh, yeah, the natural resource damage assessment money that we were able to tap from the Secretary of Energy and Environment's office. Thanks.
Any other questions anybody has? Amanda? Okay.
I'm happy to use the clicker for the rest of the time if everybody would like me to do that.
We have a motion to accept the donation, a second. Discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Brewster. Commissioner Barwick. Commissioner Gaddis. Commissioner Self. Dillingham. Commissioner Holder. Commissioner Mabry.
Aye. We have a motion to accept the financial statement.
We,
Is there a motion?
that was all wrapped up in his motion.
That motion, okay,
Yeah.
all right. Next on the agenda is the, Oklahoma Youth Hunting Program, Bill Dinkins and his guests, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. It's a pleasure to introduce Mr. Daryl Knoblet with the Oklahoma Youth Hunting Program. Several of us are very familiar with Daryl and his group. They've been part of our Wildlife Expo for years, and if you've been to Wildlife Expo, you see all the kids running around with face paint. It's very popular with the kids and the director. I think he got his face painted every year as well. But just gonna turn it over to Daryl. He's got a few things to talk about with the program. They've been doing it right since, I believe, 2008 is when y'all started with the recruiting angle. So before R3 was a brand, these guys and girls were working hard to get young kids into the field, first-time hunters. But I'll turn it over to Daryl.
I promise there's nothing deadly in there. Commissioners and staff, we appreciate a few minutes. I won't be long. I'll be brief. We didn't get to take the kids out this year. We tried for months and months and months to figure out how to hug from 6 foot away, how to be sure that the barrel of the rifle is faced the right direction from 6 feet away, and how to teach a kid to put their arms in the carcass of a deer and clean it with us from 6 feet away, and we couldn't do it. So we had to give it up this year, and it saddens us because that's a year of stories that don't get to start. We've got 75 plus guides that are accomplished and excited about taking the kids out every year, and we miss it when we don't get to do it. Thanks, Jetty. Did you get one? Thank you. Some are actually in the room. We have twice that in staff of cooks and butchers and folks that build blinds that didn't get to go. The story is what it's about for us. It's the beginning of the story. And the stories always include one thing, and I wanted to come here and do it publicly since we didn't get to do it with all the kids. The stories always include a 60-something guide saying, when I was your age, I hunted for 7 days and never saw a deer and was tickled to do it. I hunted for, 3 years before I had one within rifle range. And because of what the wildlife department does, you're going to see a deer today. Might not get a shot, but you'll see a deer. We thank you for that. Because of what you do, what we do is successful. And for those young ladies and young men that actually get to be in the blind for the morning gobble, still on the roost, then we really get to tell the story. Now, I promise there were no turkeys when I was your age. I promise the wildlife department does that. So that $10 that you spent is going well toward the stories behind you, for the people behind you. So it's all about the stories for us. Our first 500, vast majority of the funding came from the oil field. And I suspect some of you have heard that's kind of drying up. Pun intended. We're structured and we're ready to take another 1,000. And it's going to take us 10 or 15 years to do so. Funding is going to be tough. And so we have decided to do something a little bit differently. If you'll think about it, that next 1,000 hunts is going to be 1,000 kids and 1,000 parents and 1,000 households directly affected. We're gonna turn 1,000 non-hunting households into 1,000 hunting households. Try that, PETA. We are gonna absolutely directly touch and affect these people. So you add the numbers up pretty quick, but what you have to really consider is that 13-year-old little girl begins a lifetime of stories. A lifetime of stories. And it only costs us about $250 out of pocket to make that, to start that. Money well spent. If you do the 1,000 times 1,000 times 1,000 in a lifetime, it's pretty easy to figure that we're going to start the ball rolling for about 250,000 stories. Call it 25,000. Test my math. It's going to cost us $250,000 to do it. We're going to take 1,000 kids hunting for $250,000. It's going to take us 10 or 12 years to do it, maybe 15. But we've got to find some support. But we're not asking for anybody to put $250,000 up, please. But we're certainly not asking you. But there's probably press here. And if I get behind the microphone, I tell this story everywhere I go. Church is tired of hearing about it. We're looking for somebody that will reimburse us after the hunt, not before. We don't want a slush fund. We don't want money sitting around that might go away. We want someone that will back us after the fact. There's a person, there's a group, there's a company, there's somebody out there, and if I stand behind enough microphones, somebody's going to tap me on the shoulder, say, let's talk. I appreciate you letting us do what we do. We really appreciate you being so successful in rehabilitating the population of deer and turkey. The coins that we gave you on the front is just to let you know where the coin came from. But on the back, that's why we're all here. More than happy to answer any questions. Thanks again for the few minutes of your time. Appreciate it. Oh. We're running 75 or so, but we'll grow it to 100 in a heartbeat. We have more land and more guides than we can ever fill. It's always the kids. So we turn down ranches every year. And it's hard to do. It's hard to do. But getting the kids is the issue, is the hardest piece. We're having to convince families that don't know what they're missing, that they're missing something. But about 75 kids a year is what we're doing now. We hope to get a little better. We hope to put some more board members on that don't look quite like I do, that understand. I don't even know which one to say. Is TikTok the bad one? Or all of the different kinds of Instagrams and all that. We got to put some more young people on our staff. And when we do, we'll get better at it. But 75 is a minimum, and we can certainly grow it from there easily.
Or do you do it on the week?
We do it on Youth Wildlife Weekend.
On the Youth Wildlife Weekend?
Absolutely.
And is it only or about target?
Thanks for asking that. Thanks for asking that. One of the lessons that we're really, really drive home is that we never kill an animal. We only harvest. The only reason we do it. The doe that we take are fully butchered, fully processed, prepared, vacuum sealed, put in a freezer, and sent home with the recipe book. We made the mistake for years of quartering the deer and sending them home with single mamas that lived in an apartment. I guess some dogs got some really good food, but we didn't make the connection that if we can't actually show them how to take it all the way to the plate, we also feed them venison all weekend long. And the kids all get a tour in the kitchen. So we close that loop completely. And we learned, most of what we learned we did by doing it wrong. But we learned that a spike with 3 inches, it's all of the attention, and none of the other 9 doe on the ground get any attention. But if they're all doe, they're all the same size. It's amazing. A 60-pound and a 90-pound, same size, everybody's happy. And so that's what we do. It's a matter, and this is something that JD's pushed on us a lot, is it's deer camp. It's not individual mom and dad taking the individual child, it's deer camp. And so we're teaching these kids and these adults how to do deer camp. Because deer camp will survive. Deer hunter won't. Something will happen that daughter's gonna go off to college or dad's gonna get a bad knee. But deer camp will survive. They'll crave it just like we all do. Just like we're doing right now. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
If I may, real quick, one thing, I went to Daryl with the added youth hunts, private land antlerless youth hunts we have this year, and particularly Beckham County. We were needing some help. And one thing about getting ready for this commission meeting, I talked to Daryl several times, and they're gonna try to help provide us some guides out there, because we're gonna need them. And so, thank you, Daryl, for that. And I was amiss with Commissioner Barwick and Clayton Eubanks. They're part of this program, and I think they guide every year too, so job well done to them as well.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Daryl. Daryl, thanks for putting this program together every year. I think it's a fantastic program. Great way to introduce youth into hunting. And if you would, go back and tell your group, commissioners appreciate what you do. Thank you. Next on the agenda is our controlled hunts program, and the comments by Nels and Corey. I think you're on here.
Commissioners, appreciate the chance to visit with you today about the Controlled Hunts Program. I'm just going to provide a little bit of background. I know it seems like we've been talking about controlled hunts for a long time, but, you know, we have a historical perspective to look at. And that's mainly that for many years, you know, this program was not viewed as a moneymaker. Most of the applicants have lifetime licenses. And so people that pay their $5 application fee, once they're drawn, we really don't get any more revenue from them. And historically, the odds have been really poor. You know, we have a lot of people that put in and not very many permits for some of the most coveted species. And so just to reiterate, each hunter can submit in multiple categories, such as deer, elk, or antelope, turkey. And they do so for one single $5 fee. That's the way the program currently sits. And like it says there, some of the odds are really steep. The odds of drawing a bull elk tag last year were 1 in 411. To kind of give you a perspective there. And you can kind of see the ebb and flow there of going back to 2009. During that time period, that's the period I'm referencing, from thereabouts to about 2015. You know, this program basically coasted. We didn't do a lot of promotion, didn't feel like it was warranted to do so. And about in 2015, we started doing some testing of different methods, promotion methods, where, for example, we would just promote to the people that had been applying. We thought, well, we'll at least promote to them. And then we did also try to throw in some other promotions. And then this year, you can see we actually promoted, because of the raffle hunt aspect with the foundation. We did some wider promotion and some specialty promotions, like promoting to the HIP license holders, for example, the Argentinian dove hunt. But you'll see we had the most applications that we've had in the last decade, or this past year. And as I mentioned, we had less frequent promotion and no strategic audiences. And then we kind of started dialing in on that. The new grant system, the Go Outdoors system, is really kind of the foundational pivot by which we could look at doing many of these specialty segmentations. A trigger happy there. And so, as I mentioned, there's been lots of talk about controlled hunts for a number of years, all different aspects. I volunteered to pick up the ball and run with it, and we put together a real small group with Assistant Director Free, Bill Dinkins and Russ Horton, and I met several times to talk about some of these specifics. We have also been involving and will continue to involve Matt Machota with Wildlife Division kind of runs the regular controlled hunts for Wildlife Division, and Michael Bergen runs our marketing campaigns, and Mike Chrisman, of course, is pivotal in the license supervisory role. But we met several times, and what we wanted to focus on was a multi-phase approach to implementing change, and we wanted to start with the low-hanging fruits. We wanted to start with the things that we felt like were right in front of us that would have the most support, and then do a build out on these other phases. So for this coming year, for the next controlled hunt cycle, we're going to implement a preference point only option in each category. So if you, for some reason, know that you're not going to be able to participate in hunts and you don't even want to risk getting drawn, but you still want to put in your $5 application, you'll be able to select preference point only. You won't have to risk getting drawn. You'll continue to accrue your points. We'll continue to take your money. And then something that was an idea that came back from a WAFA conference, I believe, is this point guard. It's a preference point insurance. Basically, it's optional. The hunter pays for it at the same time as they submit their application. We envision it costing the same as whatever you're paying for your application. So at this point in time, that would be $5. And basically, if something comes up and you are planning on hunting, but you cannot hunt, you can claim your point guard, and your preference points are restored. You do not get your refund on your licenses, and you do not just get to hunt the next year, but you're back in the drawing with all your points. And this is maybe a particular importance considering some of our hunts are once in a lifetime hunts. So if you have a family member that has emergency surgery, or you're in a car accident, or a number of other things that life throws at you, and you have selected the point guard, you get your preference points back, which means you can keep applying in the future instead of being out of the drawing forever. We also thought about these low-hanging fruits with the foundation and the raffle hunts, and we thought let's focus on. We had one hunt, the Argentinian dove hunt last year. Let's try to get let's shoot for 6 hunts or trips. We're mainly talking about hunts, but we're also talking about fishing trips and wildlife watching excursions. So we, thanks to several of the commissioners, have secured an elk hunt in Southwest Oklahoma, a deer hunt in Northwest Oklahoma, looking at hopefully maybe trying to find some kind of a spring turkey hunt, maybe a waterfowl hunt. A crane was suggested as a unique, kind of a uniquely Oklahoma type hunt, but those aren't secured yet. We don't really have any solid leads. Paddlefish Excursion, we have a guide. Fisheries has made contact with the guide who's offered to donate a trip. His clients have caught the last 2 world records, so that should be a popular one. A couple wildlife watching excursions at Red Slough, and a bear research den visit was also envisioned as a possible excursion that could be raffled through the special raffle. And we kind of picked a number out of the air, but we thought, hey, if we're going to go from one Argentinian dove hunt, which raised $35,000, let's shoot for 6 or 7 of these excursions, and let's try to raise $100,000. So that's certainly doable, I think. We talked about some kind of a grander change to the program, maybe moving away from the $5 per person per year application fee. And there were a lot of ideas about how to do that. Some folks like the Texas model, you just pay a small fee, but for every hunt that you want to put in for. We have 170 hunts, so even if it was $1 a piece, you know, somebody might pay $150 to put in for all the hunts. But while we went around the merry-go-round on our idea train, we thought, you know, the one thing that we should take a step back and do is let's throw some science at this question. Let's put some human dimensions into action and find out really from the people who are participating in this program what it is that they want in the way of application opportunities and therefore their willingness to pay. So, and also we thought we're going to also use this opportunity then to look at some of those foundation raffle offerings. And I'm going to leave that to Betsy or Corey, but I will also point out there on the bottom the additional phase 2 possibilities. We talked about some additional species, areas, outing types. You know, there's a number of things that are on the long list, so to speak, and some of those things are going to take more time than for right now. One thing we talked about these changes potentially at the policy committee meeting back in early August, and one thing that we came up was to look at the non-resident issue. Very few non-residents are actually drawn for our hunts, and would point out, oh, that's not me, would point out as well that they do have to apply, I mean, they do have to have a hunting license to apply. So they're paying at least $75 on the license part.
On that slide, Nels, so the total drawn 5,700, that's total controlled hunts drawn?
Correct.
Okay, and so 205 of those were non-residents?
Non-residents, yep.
Hey, Nels, is there any reason why we cannot just offer more permits on all our hunting areas? Go up 10% or 15%?
Yeah, I might defer that to Bill or Wade. We have talked about that, but I think they would generally say they're offering the most permits they can offer.
So have the permit numbers always stayed the same for the last 20 years or
No.
available?
Yeah. So it does fluctuate, and the biologists on all those areas tell us based on their survey work whether they can handle more hunting pressure or need to decrease. And as Wade said, some of the biologists just need more frequent reminders to kind of take a hard look at it, and others do not, but it is science-based.
Yeah.
You want to transition to Corey now?
One point or two there is some of the most coveted hunts are on federal properties, and so we provide continual encouragement, like at Salt Plains, more deer permits. You know, those of you that have been lucky enough to get drawn there can realize there's some capacity there for them to offer more permits, but you know that's a kind of a long-term drip.
Yeah, that's a tough one too, because they typically have to go through rulemaking process at the federal level to, like when they offer more elk permits at the Wichita's a couple years ago.
Boy, I don't know if we have a no-show rate.
About 10 to 15% more that's factored into the their hunt numbers, they know there's going to be a no.
Yeah, and we know we're going to probably have to readjust based on the point. If we implement point guard, you know, we may have more people not showing up if they know they can protect their points, but we're gonna have to kind of give it a whirl and see what happens. Yeah, we're looking at that right now. When he talked about those phase two opportunities and additional raffles that we can maybe phase in, those are just the ones that are gonna take us a little longer to line up, because you gotta get with that landowner and you gotta make sure you get permission to go after what it is you're going after. Like, you wanna try to go after a big mule deer, well, we're gonna have to focus our work in the western half of the panhandle and see if we can get, somebody to participate, and maybe even a guide, to go along with it. And so we're hoping to do some more specialized, and, people have mentioned, alligator, bighorn sheep, and those things are still on the drawing board, but, those things just take more time to work out. Alligator, for example, you have to go through the whole CITES process, which is international treaties, and it gets real complicated in what you can do there, but we're still pounding away at it. Yeah.
Walk, jog, run, then run. Someday, yeah, we're gonna have the same kind of system that Wyoming has and Texas has, and they raise millions of dollars. Horizon, but right now, ship on the horizon right now.
Yep. Good.
Another interesting deal I read in Hunting Fool magazine yesterday was aoudad hunts. Aoudad are not a big game species in Oklahoma, nor are they in Texas. They're like an invasive species, but they sure are drawing lots of hunts, and most of them are on some public property, but most of them are on private property. So that might be another option to get somebody that has aoudad sheep on their private property to donate a guided hunt as well as some of these other hunts. So there's lots of opportunities out there for our commission to do some things.
Yeah, we talked about that one too. Some of those we want to get some more human dimensions work in, which is a good segue to Corey's part of the presentation. But when you start getting into exotic animals, some people's feelings change about hunting exotics. There's just some people, it's a way of life, and some people it's have strong feelings against it. So, but we talked about audads because I've got a guy that's got them on his property right now down there by Waurika. So, Corey.
So I just wanted to wrap up Nels's presentation. He mentioned human dimensions work that we're going to do for the controlled hunts project. And so a lot of questions we get about, if we're considering raising the price or changing the price, we get asked, how do you survey people and ask them if they want to pay more? So we're going to try something different to learn about what the optimal price points might be for both the controlled hunts changes and for potential foundation raffle hunts. And also for the foundation raffle hunts, try to put up some sideboards. So use customer input to figure out what they want, rather than, you guys just mentioned 15 different types of hunts. So what do we put our efforts into trying to get for a hunt? So we're going to pitch a couple different ideas to them. So one way to do this and ask customers basically what they're willing to pay more for is using something called a choice experiment. So you can see a couple examples up here. Essentially, you just present hypothetical choices for customers to make. This is used in marketing a lot. So if you're going to buy a car, there's different aspects of buying a car that you're looking at and different price points. And so this basically applies that type of marketing research to controlled hunts. So you can see a couple examples. We're still kind of working on language and format, but for the controlled hunts section, they'll be presented with choices that vary in price and the application terms. So it's a little bit more complicated because the application's not super straightforward, but they'll be shown the current type of application, if they're willing to pay for that, versus some of the changes that we've talked about. So paying maybe $1 for an unlimited number of hunts that you want to put in for, which could end up meaning that they pay $170. So it's great for us if they want to pay that, but we're not sure that they're going to do that. So it helps us estimate potential revenue in the future as well. On the foundation hunts, we'll vary the species that are offered, the price for the raffle tickets, and the methods of take. And then on both of these, when people are presented with these options, we're giving them some context. So we're looking to make these changes. Tell us what you think about these two options, or tell us if you don't want either. Because in some cases, they don't want to hunt a bear or deer, and they're just gonna, continue on with what they're doing, and we're not gonna make any money off a raffle ticket for those things. So opting out is just as good of a data point for all of these. And I believe we've discussed the foundation raffle hunts all being guided, and so we'll provide them with that additional context. So just thought that would be helpful for you all to see. And so, like I said, those are two examples. Can you go to the next slide? This is kind of how it breaks down. So on the controlled hunts, there's actually 9 different choice variations. And on the foundation hunts right now, there's 25, but I think we're actually going to build in more. So it gets pretty complicated. And so rather than ask each person to answer 25 different questions or 9 different questions, which is extremely overwhelming for a survey, we're going to randomly assign 3 or 4 different choice sets to each person. And so across the entire sample, we'll have a number of people that respond to all of these different choice sets. So that's that.
And what sample size are you going for?
Well, so we're still kind of working this out because the controlled hunts, we are going to go with a sample from probably the last 5 years of controlled hunts applicants. Online surveys are great, but not so great with responses. So we'll probably have to start with several thousand, and then if we don't get the response rate we want or we need, we'll add more people. On some of the foundation hunts, we may add additional samples from our fishing license holders who probably had not used our controlled hunt system, and also our conservation passport users who maybe don't even hunt or fish, but are interested in putting in for a raffle for wildlife viewing opportunities. So still kind of working out the details of how that's all going to work, but it's probably going to be several thousand people that will get surveyed. It'll be mostly random.
Yeah, some of you may remember, how long has it been now? A couple years ago, we wrapped up the Southwick study. So hired Southwick and Associates to look at our entire license numbers and the prices that we charge for our licenses. And they did a very similar type approach to surveying people to try to figure out what the right prices ought to be for our licenses. Some we have room to increase. Some it said you might actually make more money if you decreased them a little bit in price. So that's always the challenge for us. I think, this is very much like a retail business that we're in, and you can price yourself out of the market. You can't just start jacking prices up and hope for the best. You can price yourself out. And so that's why we think it's critically important to kind of go through this exercise and poll people and look at it scientifically to see, let's make sure we get the price right. We don't raise it too much that we run off hunters and business and lose revenue at the end of the day. You got to look for that optimal price.
Any questions?
Questions?
So because this is online, I think we should have results probably by the end of the year is my guess. Like I said, we're kind of working on finalizing the design still for the next couple weeks, but as soon as we're done and we get that programmed online, we can close up an online survey within a month pretty easily. So I don't know if we're going to have results back in time to program the controlled hunt system next year. But foundation hunts, that's something that we can start. I think they've already started working on, but controlled hunts programming in the actual license system probably still takes a little bit more time. So you probably won't see changes effective for another year and a half. But yeah, we'll get responses back pretty quick. Any other questions?
Corey, I think if you have a program like that, it's probably going to take additional staff because it's an education process to begin with. I know in other states that I applied for, there are companies out there, they charge $50 to process the application and $10 per species. So there are companies that do that. The easier we can make it for our customers, the better off this is gonna be. So that if they got a phone call, they can call in to our offices. We can walk them through how to do the application. It's gonna be a lot of work and a lot of effort, but I think it'd be well worthwhile investment.
Yeah, agreed.
Anybody else? Questions? Corey, come on,
Anything else,
comments?
Nels? Well, I'm next, so I'm just gonna stay right here.
Yeah, she's next on the agenda.
So we thought this would be a good
Good.
dovetail into an update on our Human Dimensions program. So as you know, I'm Corey, I'm the legislative liaison. My previous job was the Human Dimensions specialist. And now it's Betsy, so Betsy's sitting in the front seat. If you haven't met her, she is our new Human Dimensions specialist, still relatively new. I guess she's been here for almost 2 years. So we just want to give you an update on what's going on. So obviously, one of the projects we're working on is the controlled hunt survey, but first question is, why human dimensions? Why do we care about people, especially when we're a state fish and wildlife agency? And I do get that question quite a bit. Well, if you think about all the decisions that we make, just about all of them have to do with people, whether you like it or not. And so I found this quote, I didn't cite it, sorry, but most wildlife management problems are people problems. So we have a lot of biologists that do a great job telling us about wildlife populations, ecology, and the biological aspects of the resource. But we still have a lot of things that involve people, and understanding that people component is very helpful for making decisions. And so our agency's actually been kind of ahead of the game and had a human dimension specialist on staff for 4 decades, I think. So prior to me, it was Andrea Cruz. So she was in that job for almost 20 years. And there are state agencies just now hiring social scientists. So we use social science, and so you'll probably hear me use that interchangeably. But I think we've been ahead of the game in terms of addressing and looking at the people problems a little bit more so than other states. So I think we've done a good job. So human dimension research, I just want to kind of briefly go over what we look at. So we try to find out how people value wildlife, what benefits people want from wildlife management. So what do they want from us as a service? Social acceptability of management practices, so that's a big one that we focus on. So if we're going to make a rule change proposal, are people actually going to support that? And you want their support because you don't want to get sued, and that does happen in some states. And of course, you just want wildlife management to be successful, so you want stakeholder support in those things. And then, of course, we look at how stakeholders affect or are affected by wildlife and wildlife management decisions. So those are kind of the categories of things that we look at. So I can't take the credit for a lot of this. Betsy has been very busy in the last 2 years, but we have a lot going on in that area. So some of the fisheries things that we've done recently, we've surveyed paddlefish anglers to understand harvest, what they're doing in the field. We've done some economic impact studies on paddlefish angling. We do a angler survey every 5 years, and we did one recently in 2019. Was that last year? That was last year. Losing track of time. We did a waterfowl hunter survey 2 years ago, a deer hunter survey last year, and then every single year we do the game harvest survey. We actually hire about 10 people to come into our office and do telephone surveys every year. And so we have about 30 years of data on the game harvest survey, which also provides us a good avenue for asking human dimensions questions of our hunters every single year. One other thing that's come up with our strategic plan is several informational needs. And so Betsy's been busy helping a lot of strategic planning teams collect baseline information or implement surveys that address strategic planning needs. So some examples, we did a survey of our Outdoor Oklahoma magazine users to understand just who's reading the survey or who's reading the magazine and what kind of things they'd be interested in. We actually launched an employee exit survey. So there's a lot of questions about why folks resign or if they're happy when they retire. And so that survey has been going out for the last 6 months, I think, to both people that resign and retire. So we have some decent information. I think we're actually going to move that to a system through OMAS, so it's automated. So anytime somebody leaves, that's launched, and we can collect better information. We also have a monthly employee newsletter, the WOG, if you're familiar with it. And so we did focus groups with employees to understand how we might better serve employees with that newsletter and make some improvements with that. So lots of stuff just in the last year based on strategic planning needs. So one of the other big goals from the strategic plan is doing more R3, so recruitment, retention, reactivation. So one example, and this dovetails well with Mr. Knoblet's presentation, is we have used our game harvest survey to ask questions about mentoring. So one of the initiatives for us is to encourage hunters to take other hunters hunting. Same with anglers. So I think this was last year, we asked whether or not hunters did take somebody new with them. And the folks that did not, we asked them why, and the majority did not know any new hunters. So kind of an interesting aspect, and we've talked about maybe our agency helping link up hunters with mentors, or just, I mean, maybe it's a better communication telling people why they should consider hunting. But that's a good data point for us, because I wouldn't have expected that there was so few people that did not know other people they could take. Next slide. Another question that we asked our hunters to think back to when they first started hunting, which I'm not sure what the average age was for that, probably in the teens. But Betsy categorized these responses by generation. And so you can see this is probably related to some cultural shifts. Maybe it's related to presence of wildlife, but there's a huge shift in folks going big game hunting as their first species that they hunted and shifting away from small game hunting. So just kind of an interesting thing and something to think about if we're encouraging folks to take other people hunting. It's probably typically going to be big game, but maybe there's some opportunities for small game.
That's an interesting one right there. We kind of know
It
some of that. We think it anecdotally, like the new generation's really into deer and ducks.
Well, we
That's
actually
showing up right there.
thought it'd be hogs because we have a lot of folks hog hunting now. Hogs are number 2, tied for number 2 most pursued species now, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I don't know, maybe it's a good thing. But they didn't show up as much in here as first time opportunities. So people aren't necessarily going out hog hunting for their first time, which may be a safety thing. But so anyway, but yeah, big game is coming out on top. So one other project, shifting gears a little bit, this is somewhat related to strategic planning. It's come up a lot in strategic planning, but when I initially started at the agency, I went around and talked to a lot of biologists and just asked what kind of human interventions information they needed. Of course, we have a lot of WMAs, we have a lot of resources that go into our WMAs, but we don't have a lot of standardized ways to understand the people that visit our WMAs. So you can obviously do surveys on WMAs, but it takes a lot of time, money, effort. And so we looked at using car counters. And I found a product that's made out of Canada called Traffics is the company. And you can see the picture on the top right. I meant to bring one with me, but it essentially fits in my hand. So that's our car counter. I got 5 biologists to help me test out whether or not this was going to be an effective process to use and if the equipment was reliable. So we had 5 areas launch this. They all got car counters for every single entrance at their WMAs. Some of them had these people counters. So for walk-in areas, you can actually count people walking by, and that's the bottom left picture. And so we've been doing this now for, I think we're going into the 3rd year, and we have about 17 areas on board because that first year was pretty successful. The biologists really doesn't take much time. They put them in the ground in some cases, so you can bury them so people don't steal them. And then that little device on the bottom right is what they use to go up to the device. They download the data and they bring that back to their computer. So they don't need laptops in the field. It's pretty remote. And then one other advantage of this system is it comes with a centralized data storage software. So it's online. You don't have to have something downloaded on your computer. But all the biologists upload their data to the same system. And so I don't have to keep track of 15 different biologists' data. It's all in one place. And it's good for them because it's organized. They don't have to clean up their data or anything like that. I'll show you what the report looks like in a second. But it's been really helpful for just tracking overall use in numbers. And of course, it takes very little time on the employee's end. So we're hoping to continue adding these as biologists express interest and we have money in the budget. Next slide. So this is one example. Blue River has been one of our pilot test groups. So they've had the car counters out for the longest. He actually has several because he has several entrances and several walk-in areas, but this is the main gate. So this is of course where most of the visitation's happening, but this is an example of the overview of the data that he can get. So he can see trends year over year, hourly trends, and daily trends. And so you can see a little bit of the jump on the bottom right in 2020 that he's seen because he has had a lot of people visiting due to COVID. But it's cool. If you're a data person, it's cool because this is all accessible and they can run those reports anytime and kind of see what's going on in their areas. Of course, there's limitations to everything. There are several WMAs that we have that don't have main roads. They're off county roads and it's not really effective to use a car counter. So you can't really do that at every area. And then of course, they only count individual cars or people, so you don't actually know what people are doing when they visit the area. We've kind of addressed this a little bit. Down at James Collins, he has car counters and he knows he has oil and gas traffic. And so he set up cameras, game cameras, to try to subtract oil and gas traffic. It ended up being overly complicated, but there are ways that you can subtract that out. But I think overall, we're just kind of using it as a general baseline and keeping track of trends and use with that equipment. And they're pretty inexpensive too. I think it's like $500 for one little device, and none of them have broken so far, so it's good. Another related project that we're doing that we just launched is a WMA economics project. So I mentioned that WMAs are difficult to survey and the users are difficult to survey because we don't have a license specific to using public lands. And so we decided to outsource this to our friends at OSU. And so we just had a graduate student, she just came on board this summer, and so she's just getting ready to do this project over the next couple of years. But she's going to end up surveying people based on our license data, looking at satisfaction with WMAs, and then of course they're going to do an economic impact study to see what our WMAs can contribute to those local communities. So we're anecdotally pretty sure that our WMAs are pretty helpful to rural communities, but we have not put a number to that, and so we're hoping to do that with this study. Next. One other cool project that we're getting ready to do is a private landowner survey. So on the flip side of public lands are private lands. The majority of Oklahoma is privately held, and as I mentioned, wildlife cannot be successful without people, but also specifically without landowners and their participation in wildlife management. And so we are working with a private lands crew to put this survey together, which essentially we're going to try and understand what private landowners' land management practices are and if and how they benefit wildlife, and then highlight some opportunities for how we might be able to better assist landowners in the future for improving wildlife habitat on private property. We're also looking at some other stuff about recognition of game wardens, nuisance wildlife issues, so pretty comprehensive. I think the first time we've really done this specifically targeted to private landowners, so should be some pretty good information. Because the people that we're surveying are not our constituents necessarily, some of them might be, we are heavily pilot testing the survey. So we've actually had several internal staff, I think several in the room, help us look over the survey and make sure it makes sense. But we've also sent it out to some friends at Farm Bureau, Noble Foundation, Ag. So we've got folks that aren't necessarily familiar with what we're doing, helping us review the survey and make sure it's good to go. So that's, I think we'll probably wrap that up in the next couple weeks and maybe figure out how to get it sent out over the fall and the winter. So look for that one. Last thing, because there is only one Betsy, I have to give her all the credit for this, has created a human dimensions working group internally. So she sought out volunteer representatives from across the agency, so you can see their names there. They're all divisions, to be basically the advocates for human dimensions within our agency. When I first started, I surveyed staff and tried to get an understanding of people's understanding of human dimensions. And at the time, most of our staff had not had any formal training, no classes, nothing in human dimensions. And they know it's relevant, but they don't know how to collect information or how to use it. And so we're hoping to use this group to kind of increase that knowledge of human dimensions and also bring to Betsy the issues that really need human dimensions research and data to help make some decisions in the future. So looking forward to what this team does. I think they just got started in the last month and there's already a ton of ideas floating around. So should be good and helpful for our agency. That's basically it. There's a lot going on, but I just want to cover a couple things. We do try to post our reports from surveys online. So you can find them on our website on either the hunting or fishing pages, and I'll take any questions.
Cool. Questions? Comprehensive stuff right there.
Yes. Cool. Thanks.
Covered it well.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks. Good job. To you too, Betsy. Good work.
Sound like you got a lot of work ahead of you, Corey and Betsy, so she has a lot of work. Okay, somebody's got a lot of work. Okay. Agenda item number 13, new business, discussion of any matter not known about or which could not have been reasonably foreseen 24 hours prior to the scheduled meeting. There being none, the next meeting is going to be October the 5th on Monday, 2020 at 9 a.m. There being no further business, meeting is adjourned.